He never wanted a wife, especially not one chosen by his grandmother. Arun Shah, the cold and feared CEO of Shah Industries, had scared away every proposed bride for years. This time, he wanted to end it once and for all. So, he created a plan too ruthless even for himself. He would pretend to be poor. Not just simple, but pathetic. Torn clothes. A rented, crumbling house. Dusty floors. A broken stove. No luxuries. No comfort. Nothing that hinted he owned half the city. He wanted the girl to run away in disgust. But when Mehak stepped inside, she didn't wrinkle her nose. She didn't make a face. She didn't even step back. She looked around with calm eyes, then looked at him with a softness he had never received in his life. "This is your home?" she asked quietly. Arun nodded, fully expecting her to say no. Instead, she smiled. A small, gentle smile that made his throat tighten. "It's humble but warm. I don't mind." He stared at her, stunned. Nobody in his world accepted less. Everyone chased after his money, his power, his status. But this poor village girl looked at him as if he, in his worn-out clothes, was enough. And for the first time in years, Arun Shah, the CEO who commanded thousands, felt speechless. This was not going according to plan. Not at all. The village elders waited for her answer, their pens ready, their expressions impatient. Arun kept his eyes low, already preparing the rejection he thought she would give. But before he could speak, Mehak quietly said, "I accept." Silence. Utter, shocked silence. Arun's head snapped up. Her voice wasn't trembling. Her hands weren't shaking. She looked certain, calm, steady, like she had already made peace with her choice. "You accept," he whispered, unable to hide the disbelief. She nodded with a soft, respectful smile. "I'm not marrying a house or money. I'm marrying a human being." For the first time in his life, Arun felt his chest tighten so sharply it almost hurt. The marriage was done within hours. Simple. Quiet. No makeup artists, no photographers, no celebrations. Just a small ceremony in a village hall that smelled of incense and old wood. When they reached the tiny house, Mehak removed her bangles so they wouldn't make noise and immediately walked to the kitchen. "You must be tired," she said. "Sit. I'll make tea." Arun stared at her. Nobody had ever served him anything out of kindness, only fear or expectation. She cooked with practiced hands, humming softly. She cleaned the messy table without complaining. She even folded the blanket on his bed, as if she had lived there forever. That night, he found her sitting on the floor, eating from a small steel plate. "Why are you eating there?" he asked. She smiled. "There isn't another chair. You can have it." Something inside him twisted painfully. She was giving him comfort he didn't deserve. Finally, he asked the question that had been burning him alive. "Why did you marry me, Mehak? A poor man with nothing?" She looked up, her eyes warm and honest. "Because you look at people with respect, not wealth. That's rare." And just like that, the cold billionaire, hidden under a mask of poverty, felt the first crack in his perfectly controlled heart. Days passed, and the lie between them grew heavier on Arun's chest. He had built empires, crushed competitors, controlled markets, yet he couldn't control the way Mehak's kindness shattered him piece by piece. She wasn't impressed by anything he pretended to have, because he had nothing. That was the point. But she still treated him like he was worth everything. One morning, she noticed a tear in his shirt and quietly stitched it while he slept. When he woke up, she said, "I hope you don't mind. I didn't want you to be embarrassed outside." Embarrassed? He was the man who owned entire skyscrapers. But she said it with such gentle sincerity that he couldn't speak. Another day, she gave him the larger portion of food, pretending she wasn't hungry. He caught her later drinking water to fill her empty stomach. That night, something inside him broke. He secretly called his assistant and ordered medical supplies for her sick mother anonymously. He hired security to protect her on her way to the well. He even arranged for her village's broken water pump to be repaired overnight. All of it done quietly, in the shadows. She had no idea, but she felt something changing. Once, Mehak saw a bruise on his hand from lifting heavy crates to maintain his poor man cover. Without hesitation, she sat beside him and wrapped it gently with an old cloth. "You work too hard," she whispered. He looked at her, unable to stop himself from asking, "Mehak, if I wasn't poor, if I was someone completely different, would you still stay?" She laughed softly, not understanding the weight of the question. "I'd stay even if you were the king of the world." Arun felt his breath disappear. Because she didn't know, he was the king of a world built on power, fear, and money. And for the first time, he hated that world, because it meant he would eventually have to break hers. The lie couldn't survive forever. Arun had been juggling two lives: the poor husband, who lived in a broken house, and the CEO, whose single signature moved billions. But the board of directors had reached their limit. There was a crisis in the company, and the media had started circling like vultures. One morning, before sunrise, he left quietly. He thought she would still be asleep. He thought she wouldn't follow. He was wrong. Mehak woke up moments after he left, her instincts tightening with worry. His pillow was still warm. His shoes were gone. His steps had been rushed. She wrapped her shawl around herself and followed the distant sound of engines. What she saw next shattered her world. Arun, her simple, poor husband, stepped into a caravan of sleek black cars. Dozens of security guards lined up, bowing their heads. A chauffeur opened the door for him with trembling hands. Flashes from cameras lit the air as reporters shouted his name. "Arun Shah, is it true the board wants your resignation?" "Sir, is the merger going through? Mr. Shah, any comment?" She froze. Her body went cold. Arun Shah. Her poor husband had a last name that echoed through skyscrapers. The man she married was the billionaire everyone feared. Arun turned, and the moment he saw her standing at the edge of the crowd, confusion, fear, and guilt collided in his eyes. He pushed through the reporters, ignoring the cameras, ignoring the chaos. He reached her breathlessly. "Mehak, listen." She stepped back. Just one step, but it felt like a lifetime. "You lied to me," she whispered, her voice shaking. Everything was a lie?" "No," he said immediately, desperation spilling from every word. "Only my identity. Not my feelings. Never my feelings." Tears gathered in her eyes. "I married a man who had nothing," she said softly. "I didn't know I was marrying someone who had everything. And I didn't know I could lose everything because of one lie," he whispered. Reporters watched. Employees watched. The whole city watched. But for Arun, there was only her. The girl who married him when he had nothing, and might leave him now that she knew he had everything. Arun had faced ruthless investors, hostile takeovers, and corporate betrayal. But nothing terrified him like the look in Mehak's eyes right now. She turned away, wiping her tears with the edge of her dupatta. He reached for her hand, but she pulled back gently, the rejection slicing deeper than any knife. "Mehak, please," he whispered, his voice cracking in a way the world had never heard from him. "I didn't lie to hurt you. I lied because I thought if you knew who I really was, you'd never choose me." She swallowed hard, her voice trembling. "You should have trusted me to choose with my heart." He felt something inside him collapse. "No," he said softly, stepping closer. "I should have trusted myself to be worthy of your heart." She looked up at him then, hurt, betrayed, confused. And he broke completely. Right there in front of his board members, his employees, reporters, cameras. Arun Shah, the feared CEO, the untouchable billionaire, fell to his knees. Gasps echoed through the crowd. No one had ever seen him kneel. Not for power. Not for business. Not for anyone. Except her. He grabbed her hands, his voice barely a breath. "Don't leave me. Don't walk away. Not you. Anyone else but not you." Mehak's tears fell silently. Her fingers trembled in his. "I didn't marry money," she whispered. "I married a man who respected me, who cared, who showed me gentleness when he had nothing. And that man is still here," Arun said, desperate. "Take everything I own, Take the company, take the name, just don't take yourself away from me. She stared at him, this powerful man kneeling in front of her like a broken child. Her heart ached. Slowly, she touched his face. His eyes closed at her touch, relief and fear mixing like a storm. You didn't need to pretend to be poor, she murmured. I loved you for your heart, not your disguise. He took her hand, pressed it to his chest, over the heart that wouldn't stop shaking. This, he whispered, belongs to you. It always has. For a long moment, she said nothing. Then softly, so softly, he almost didn't hear it, she said, Take me home, Marn. The real home. With the real you. He looked up, breathless. Are you forgiving me? She gave a small, tired smile. I'm giving you another chance. Don't waste it. Arn stood, pulling her into his arms, holding her as if the world could steal her at any second. Reporters snapped photos. Employees whispered. The city buzzed with shock. But none of it mattered. Because in that moment, the billionaire who hid behind power and the poor girl who married a stranger finally met each other honestly. No disguises. No fear. No lies. Just him. Just her. Just love. Life changed overnight. Not because Arun Shah was a billionaire, but because for the first time, he finally lived like a man who had something to lose. Someone whose heart no longer belonged to himself. Mehak entered his world quietly. No designer clothes. No fancy jewelry. No attempt to fit into the glittering circles that once feared and worshipped him. She walked through the towering glass doors of Shah Industries in her simple clothes, her dupatta fluttering softly. And every employee stopped breathing. The woman their CEO had kneeled for. The woman he had fought the world for. The woman who had married him when he had nothing. Arun walked beside her, not a step ahead. For the first time, he wasn't leading anyone. He was walking with someone. They entered his penthouse. No, their penthouse. A place filled with cold marble, silent rooms, and untouched luxury. Arun watched her look around, waiting for her reaction. She simply smiled. It's beautiful, but it looks lonely. Her words pierced him. He had built a palace out of emptiness. She turned it into a home with one sentence. Over the next days, she filled the silence with laughter, warmth, small acts of care. Things money had never been able to buy for him. One evening, as she watered the small plant she brought from the village, Arun watched her quietly. You brought that old plant here? He asked. She nodded. It was growing, just needed a better place to bloom. He understood instantly. So had he. Mehak placed the plant near the window and turned to him. You don't have to keep proving yourself to me, Arun. He stepped closer, brushing a strand of hair from her face. I'm not proving anything, he said softly. I'm learning how to love without fear. She touched his hand gently. And I'm learning how to trust again. There was no dramatic kiss, no dramatic music. Just two people choosing each other, slowly, honestly. Later that night, as they stood on the balcony overlooking the glowing city, Arun wrapped his arms around her. I spent my whole life surrounded by people, he whispered. But I've never felt seen until the day you walked into that broken house. She leaned her head on his chest. And I've never felt safe, she said softly. Until you told me the truth. For the first time in years, Arun Shah breathed freely. Not as a CEO. Not as a billionaire. Not as a powerful man terrified of being used. But as a husband. A partner. A man finally brave enough to love. And be loved. Without hiding. The world outside whispered their story. But inside their home, the truth was simple. He pretended to have nothing. She chose him anyway. And that choice became everything.